After years of being stuck to one room, being able to game wherever you want, whenever you want, all made effortless by the Switch, it was the dream. You can take your Switch out of its dock, put it in your pocket, and rock and roll to the next room. And yeah, I know you can do that with other consoles too, but it's not the same. Or you need to buy some extra thing for an already expensive console. With Switch, portability is built right in, and legend has it that there's even some people who have taken their Switch outside their home. Wild stuff. In the battle of Switch versus everything, part of a series where I make the case for every console, by the way, things can get a little awkward because the Switch seems to borrow at least a game or two from practically everything, most famously from the Wii U. At least your auntie's board game collection is safe. Maybe not. Yeah, the Switch's reach goes far and wide, offering all kinds of games. It's got Nintendo games, I know, a shocker. It's got Sega games, third-party games, indie games, older games, games you can pick up and play, games that'll make you scream till your voice goes hoarse, games where you can horse around, games where you can ride a horse. But most important of all, it's got people's most favorite type of game. Games they like. Never have I seen a console where people just low-key own 50 games for it without really trying. And when they really try, well, yeah. But anyways, the appeal of the Switch makes a lot of sense to me for the following reason. Every once in a while, you get a Nintendo console that not only has Nintendo games on it, but also gets really strong third-party support. And by every once in a while, I mean, yeah, this hasn't happened since the Super Nintendo, one of the most popular choices for the best console ever. Although, sure, GameCube had decent third-party support too. But going even further in the Switch's favor is that it has existed in a time where the video game industry is way bigger than it was back then, meaning you have even more developers supporting the Switch, in addition to the passage of time creating a far more extensive gaming history with tons of games from the past to put on the Switch. So combine that with the power of the games Nintendo makes themselves, which sure have their haters, but are generally considered the best game developer among the companies making consoles. Wait, hold on, are we sure? Well, people lost their minds over this game, myself included, and the big compliment being thrown around is that it's a Nintendo tier platformer. So that should tell you what kind of standard Nintendo has set. Not once did I hear someone say, yo, this game is the best thing since Blinx the Time Sweeper. It's either some Nintendo platformer or sliced bread. Naturally, with all the games people enjoy that are available on the Switch, collecting them is a big part of the appeal for many. Yeah, some people don't really care about that, but a large chunk do. It's gotta be the uniform red spines, am I right? People wonder why Toy-Con didn't take off. It's the non-red spine. But perhaps the biggest reason is that the games come on cartridges, a long-standing champion of physical media and a real comfort for some. My physical copy of Scott Pilgrim puts me to sleep with a bedtime story. And that story goes, once upon a time, some red-haired dork wanted to make sure he was safe from his game getting delisted online. The end. I love that one. Cartridges just have that kind of mystique and power over people, and believe me, I'm as big a fan of those sweet rounded edges on Wii U discs as much as anyone. Seriously, they put other discs to shame. But cartridges just feel like they'll stand the test of time better. Nintendo even did us a favor by adding an extra layer of protection against the #1 cause of dead game cartridges: eating them, by making them taste nasty. Game Boy carts are delicious, but the cartridges, along with with the hybrid nature of the console seem to be a big reason why people go for the Switch versions of games, even if they're available on other platforms. Switch games can typically just be run straight off the cartridge too. No installs, and any updates are generally small and quick to download. It's important I mention that games almost always either run better or at higher resolutions on other platforms, but a lot of people just don't care. Video games have reached a point now where less people care about visual fidelity than they did in the past. And before some of you virtually slap me in the comments, let me do it in real life for you. Happy? Now, will you let me clarify? I said less people than in the past, which means there are still people who care, just not as many, or for some people, they just don't care as much. It wouldn't have sold so many units otherwise, and it only makes sense. With the law of diminishing returns, graphics can only be improved so much before the increases in fidelity become less and less noticeable. We're a long ways from the days of the jump to Dreamcast blowing our minds. And when you look at the gaming landscape, a huge majority of games aren't even trying to push the limits of what the most powerful hardware can do. It's expensive, takes a ton of time, and your game might end up just getting review bombed on Metacritic anyway. The visual aesthetics of lower budget games, with indie games being a major focal point, seem to be perfectly acceptable to a large percentage of your average gamers. Remember, most of the gaming populace doesn't yell about stuff online, they just play their games. Many people even say they're more impressed by creative visual choices, the artistic vision, than they are with how photorealistic or cutting edge things are. The PS5 Pro was a beast at release, but I never saw such little enthusiasm for a newly announced most powerful system. Sure, some of that is stuff like the price and no disk drive, but still, and yeah, there's people who love it and enjoy it, more power to them, literally and figuratively. Others might just opt for a powered up PC, so on and so forth. I get all of that, but none of that is the point. The point is that games can be loved without pushing the limits of the most powerful hardware on the market. And the proof is in the Switch sales numbers, which as of this video is on track to be the best-selling console of all time. Clearly a lot of people like this thing, and those numbers simply can't be ignored. I mean, you could ignore them, but they're still there. Like Timmy. You're never getting your game back, Timmy. Plus, I've noticed that a decent chunk of games for the Switch prioritize running at around 60 frames per second anyways. And with games running well enough for a lot of people, the novelty of having the games on a cartridge, on the Switch with the freedom of going room to room that it provides is often enough to be convincing. Also, luckily, most first-party Nintendo titles aren't going for photorealism, ain't that a bummer? Rather, a more colorful, animated style, so they can get away with hardware that's not the most powerful. A lot of it comes down to artistic choices and good optimization. Heck, even Digital Foundry will often praise first-party Switch titles for how well optimized they are. Oh, and speaking of optimization, the Switch is supported with a ton of different accessories. Maybe not anything that gives the Game Boy's fishing sonar a run for its money, but there's still a lot. Most notably, alternatives for Joy-Cons. I got some more comfy ones myself, and you know, bigger, more comfy Joy-Cons remind me of how the Wii U gamepad feels, just saying. And lucky for all of us retro fans out there, Nintendo even released official versions of some old favorite controllers. Seriously, there's so much available for this console that it's hard to go wrong. Everyone can have such a dramatically different experience with it that caters to their needs. Even the folks who enjoy hating it have plenty of fans to provoke. Truly a console for everyone, and that's the case for why it's the best console ever. You know, the Switch finding success despite being underpowered has me feeling capable, and for my next trick, I'm going to bench press my couch. And second thought, maybe we do need the Switch too.
He's the Retro Bird, yeah. And he's talking about video